Hi, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of On Screen. I'm your host, Dylan Wright, and each week I'll be taking you on a journey through film and television. Now, this week I want to talk about something that's been plaguing Hollywood for many, many years. But before I do that, I want to give you guys kind of a little taste of what to expect as this podcast goes on. So each week I'm going to bring in a topic about film or television and talk about that. And then afterwards, I'm going to give you guys a Netflix pick of the week, both the movie and a television show that I think you guys should be checking out on Netflix. So with that all said, let's get started with the first topic. So today, in honor of The Magnificent Seven having recently come out and a revival of the Blair Witch series that is going to be coming out, I want to talk about remakes. The good remakes, the bad remakes, the remakes that everybody forgets about. So why is Hollywood really fascinated with the idea of a remake? Is it a lack of creativity on the part of the studios, that they're just running out of ideas? Or is it that they want to bring something modern to the table that wasn't really available to do back in the day? A lot of sci-fi films nowadays kind of have that mindset where, the originals had stop motion and a lot of blood, but these ones, we could have CGI explosions and we can Michael Bay this movie to the extreme to make it really exciting to the audiences. But the problem with a lot of, especially sci-fi remakes, are that the remakes forget the spirit of what the original one is trying to accomplish. Like, take, for instance, the recent remake of Robocop. Sure, you have all these CGI explosions and Gary Oldman and Michael Keaton doing his thing, but you also miss out on the cutting-edge satire and the real heart that the original Robocop had. Sure, there was a lot of, ultra-violence and a lot of action scenes in the original Robocop, but you also had scenes where he's finding out, that he's rediscovering his family, finding that he's not just this robotic police, bot that's trying to stop crime. He was also a family man before the accident that created him and made him Robocop. Another remake that kind of forgets what the original's about is Halloween. The original was done by John Carpenter in the 70s, and it's a masterpiece of horror. You have great suspense. The shots are beautiful. There's a lot of death, which is great in a horror movie. But the remake tries to create this misunderstood figure in the killer of Michael Myers. He's trying to make him, he had an abused childhood, and his family was messed up, and there's a real reason why this monster's a monster, but he's really just a sweetheart at heart. But the original point of the first Halloween was that he was this unstoppable, force of nature that really couldn't be reasoned with or didn't really have a soul. He just wanted to kill, and we didn't know why. It's understandable that Rob Zombie wanted to put his own spin on the character of Michael Myers, but if you take away what made the original such a classic, you're kind of missing the point of why you should be doing this remake in the first place. This is something that the revitalization of Star Wars got right, at least the second time around. It understood what made the original 3 movies such a joy to watch, whereas the prequel trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, kind of lost what made the original trilogy so special. Episode 7 kind of is almost like a rehash of Episode 4, where there's a person going on a journey to try and find themselves, as well as helping out this rebellion. And it's a fun watch. It's genuinely entertaining, and it has the spirit of what the original movies were all about. It's not bad to want to revisit a franchise that has made money in the past. In fact, it's a very smart idea. You know that the audience is going to be there. You know that you will probably make a profit. Whether or not the film will be good, it doesn't matter at that point, because you're going to be in the positive no matter what. And that's probably the biggest reason why studios keep going to remakes. They look back at the movies that worked, and they're just repackaging them for a new generation. They're also doing it for the old generation and the nostalgia, because nostalgia is such a powerful tool that it's used quite frequently in Hollywood. You have the Transformers, which was an 80s cartoon, and it was a toy brand, and It went stagnant for a while. Sure, there was a couple of series, but then they brought it back through the wonderful hands of Michael Bay and revitalized a franchise that was long since considered old hat. The same thing happened with the Ninja Turtles time and again. You know, it was something that worked in the past, and they waited long enough for the people that it worked for, who were kids at that time, to come back and fill their pockets with money. Now, a lot of it probably has to do that the people that are in charge right now really want their childhood to come back strong. Like the people that grew up in the 80s, for instance, now want their old 80s cartoons to fill the big screen. Like, for instance, the recent Gem and the Holograms reboot that was a complete failure because it ultimately forgot what the original show was about. Instead of this crazy 80s cartoon filled with, spacefaring adventures and crazy, music, we have a YouTube star that hides behind makeup in order to be able to perform her music in front of people. It just falls flat because it doesn't even remotely resemble what the show was in the first place. So if you're going to be doing a remake, you have to be faithful to the original source, and you have to remember what made it special. And like I said, remakes and returning to a franchise that hasn't had a movie in a couple of years isn't always a bad thing. It's sometimes great to see a franchise that you long since thought was done come back and be triumphant in its return. This is a rare case for it to happen, but on occasion, sometimes it'll do great. I mean, the big example still is Star Wars, but also its rival Star Trek kind of made a return with its movie series starring Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. People thought that Star Trek was done after the latest series Enterprise went off air, but now that it's been revitalized by the movies, there's even a new series coming out. So the revitalization of old series can be a good thing, and it can come out with some really great products. But the only thing is you really have to be careful to not step on the grave of what came before without being respectful to it. One of the movies that does that is the remake of Point Break. Now, the original Point Break came out in the 80s. It's definitely an 80s action film starring Keanu Reeves and the late Patrick Swayze. It was recently remade in, I believe, 2015 into this, extreme sports movie where, the guys are like mountain biking and wingsuit gliding into all their crimes, whereas in the original Point Break, it was a bunch of surfers that robbed banks dressed as former presidents of the United States. Now, it's a pretty goofy concept, but the movie was pretty good. It had, the undercover cop trying to not get too far undercover where he can't return. It had some surfing in it that was really exciting. It had bank heists. It had chases. It was a very exciting movie for your typical 80s action movie. But this new one is just like, okay, we're going to just do stunts and stunts and stunts, and we're not really going to try and be as good as the original Point Break. We're just going to do crazy stunts and hope that the audience doesn't notice how bad the rest of our movie is. And sadly, they did. The box office did not fare well for Point Break, and it ended up kind of fading into DVD $5 bins at Walmart. Another remake that got some pretty good ground was the remake to the Ghostbusters, the all-female reboot of the series. Now, I saw that in theaters, and I was one of the people that was actually excited to see an all-female Ghostbusters. I thought it was a really cool idea. The cast was really, really solid, and ultimately, it was a great movie. Sure, it wasn't the perfect movie, the best movie ever, but it was really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun watching it, and part of that was just how great the cast was. You had just skilled comedians doing their thing on the big screen, and it was something to really admire. And And no matter what kind of buzz it got, negative or positive, it was still people talking about it. The idea of an all-female cast of Ghostbusters got people thinking about what that really means. Now, whether it's the fact that they could be role models to girls that have waited forever to not see women as sex objects in movies and actual characters, or the negative that there can't be an all-female Ghostbusters because the minds of feeble people can't handle four women on screen that not dressed in skimpy clothes. But it's just it's something that could really be a conversation piece, and that's another great thing about remakes is the buzz and the talk it gets about comparing it to the old and to the new. But at the same time, it's also a detractor that it will never escape from the shadow of what came before. You're opening yourself up to comparison when you literally remake a movie. So now it's time for my Netflix pick of the week, and my first pick is going to be a movie that actually won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay back in 2015. It's called Nightcrawler, and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's basically a guy that's trying to get into freelance videography for news stations, and it kind of shows how kind of creepy the guy is and how far he's willing to go to get the shots that he wants to sell to the news station. And it's really interesting, especially as a comm student, to see the bad things that this guy does and the things that would definitely not make it into the code of ethics in journalism. So that's going to be my Netflix movie pick of the week. And my show pick of the week is definitely going to be a show that I'm sure you've heard so much about. You're probably tired to death of it by now. It's Stranger Things. It's a great homage to all the 80s films that Steven Spielberg made, as well as the Stephen King stories back in the day. And it's a really well-made, well-acted, well-written, fun time. And it's only 8 episodes, so it's not that much of an investment. So I would definitely check that out if I was you. So that's going to be it for this episode of On Screen. I've been your host, Dylan Wright, and I want to thank you guys for listening to the very first episode, and I hope you come back next week for some more talk on movies and television. See you then.